7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to the Marketing Essentials podcast. Our unique team helps small businesses grow by providing essential marketing expertise.
My name is Bill Parmentier of W. Parmentier Photography.
I'm Justin Kerr of Justin Kerr Design.
I'm Alicia Piazza with Custom Marketing Solutions.
And together we make up
the Marketing Essentials team. So today we are speaking with Ashley Davies Sarji of ABLEx Consulting, and we're going to be talking to her about who is your customer really. So Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, maybe a little bit about background about how you got into this field, and maybe explain a little bit about exactly, what is customer experience and how does that relate to marketing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. Happy to be part of this podcast. I know you guys do some really great work. Ashley Davies Sarji, ABLEx Consultants, and my business is primarily focused on helping other small businesses to understand who their customer is, what their customer wants, and how to provide an excellent experience for their customers to be able to retain them as loyal clients and fans, customers, fans, for forever. So I guess to answer your question about background, most of my career has been at Fidelity Investments and worked diligently on the strategy of the branch network for customer experience, and both the building of the strategy and also the implementation. And Fidelity is known for its customer experience, and it has a really, really big focus on that from a technology perspective, from a staffing perspective, putting a lot of resources toward providing the best customer experience. And so I really enjoyed that work and became a certified customer experience professional through the Customer Experience Professionals Association as a result of my work at Fidelity. And I left Fidelity and thought, you know what, I really enjoy this work, but I would like it so much more if I could help small businesses do this kind of work and really focus on their customer and try to understand who their customer is. So kind of taking the same big corporation principles and boiling them down to be relevant for smaller businesses.
Nice.
And so far I've worked with small businesses, but I'd also like to expand into nonprofits as well, because I think that I have a lot to offer, nonprofit boards, staff, volunteers. I think there's a lot that could be learned in that space about customer experience as well.
So walk us through, when you first meet with a client and you're trying to explain to them what you do, what's the process that you would actually take a potential client through?
Well, it's interesting. When I first started, I thought, what I would do is sit down and do some data analysis and figure out who their customer is, and to take this very rigid kind of process. But really, what I've learned from my clients in the last couple months that I've taken on several at a time, a customer can be more than just an end customer. The one that purchases your products or services. A customer is also your employees. A customer can also be any vendors that you use. So you have to buy, as a small business owner, you have to buy products and services from other businesses. So really, there's multiple components there. And when I sit down with a client, they already have an idea of where they think that their trouble spots are. I worked recently with a bridal shop, and she's the business owner, nailed the customer experience. I mean, really, she thought of everything in regard to the end customer, the brides that are coming in to purchase the product. But where she really struggled was with her employee engagement. She felt that her employees didn't love and weren't invested in the business the way that she was, and she really wanted them to have that connection with the business. So what I did with her is I helped her build an employee engagement program. So that's part of customer experience. Your employees are also your customers.
So what are some of the things that you did that helped her have more engaged employees?
When we sat down, I said, okay, so tell me how I can help you. And what I heard from her, just I kind of make the conversation organic. What do you think your problems are? And the conversation might have first started about her end customer, the brides, getting them to come back and getting them to purchase and getting them to, walk-ins, make appointments or something like that. But really what ended up being the truth, the more she talked about it, was just this fact that she didn't feel her employees were invested in her business. So we kind of, it wasn't what we started talking about initially, but it was where we arrived as a result of just the conversation. So that's a really very important part of the process, is just discovering what the problem really is,
Sure.
And I think a lot of business owners feel that there's something that they could do, but sometimes have a hard time figuring out exactly what that is. So that's a big step in the process.
When you take the time to sit down and talk to the client, and like you said, they may have a sense of something's wrong, but they're not sure. But in the course of working with them and talking with them, this stuff is borne out,
Sure.
and you're able to, and really it's just taking the time most of the time, and the business owners, they're so focused on, working in their business that it's hard sometimes for them to pull back and see a bigger picture.
Absolutely.
They're especially caught up in that end customer that you're talking about.
Right, money, where the source of revenue, and you can't blame them for that. But sometimes there are factors that are getting in the way of that relationship and that best experience for the end customer, and you just have to discover what those things are.
But a customer means anyone who has a vested interest in the successfulness of the business. So I guess my question is, when you sit down with a new business or a client of yours, is it kind of like when you start talking about the employees and the vendors, is it kind of like a aha moment for them? Like, wow, I never thought about it like that.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, they're always looking at the end customer.
Wait a second. Could it be that my relationship with my employees or with my vendors is actually getting in the way of me making more money? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I do get really passionate about that, and I kind of thrive on getting them to that realization too. That's fun for me. That's like detective work. I like that a lot.
I think we've been able to determine a little bit, okay, what is a customer? And it's not what you would think right away, that it does include everybody who has a vested interest in the organization. Is there anyone else? I mean, the end customer is one. Employees can be considered customers. Or is there anybody else that fits into that area?
Yeah. So the vendors, that piece.
Okay.
I worked with a client of mine recently that it was more of a B2B type business. The services they provide a service to other businesses. So, when I start working with anybody, like I said, like we talked about it already, the end customer is what they have in mind. So this business was no different. When they came to me, they said, we're not getting enough sales. We're not selling enough of our services to other businesses. And so in order to make ends meet, where the owner had kind of taken his head was, I want big ticket, big retainer clients. I think everyone kind of is seduced by that, right? Mm-hmm. Because it would make life a whole lot easier to have just a handful of big ticket retainers than you do dealing with a smaller client. But where this particular business thrived was with the smaller business. Over time, he had taken his service that had been historically best suited to small businesses, tried to add on some bells and whistles to make it attractive to a larger business that would with that big ticket retainer. But the product he couldn't really support it. His business couldn't really support that level of product. And so what I did in that instance is sitting down with the business owner. I sat down with his team in kind of a workshop fashion, because a lot of times that makes sense to kind of get everybody on board. And honestly, that's something that I do normally, is try to get the input of everybody on the team as to what the problem is. I work with the business owner first and then bring the rest of the team in to try to think through what we've already discovered.
Because they're customers too, right?
Absolutely, right. And honestly, anything that we come up with, it can't be fully executed without the help of the whole team. So there's always that component,
Sure.
I know from experience at a corporation, where they build the strategy at a high level and then they try to push it down on employees, that very rarely takes off. It very rarely works because
You don't have the buy-in, right?
Right, you don't have the buy-in, exactly. So that employee piece is I think, regardless of what the business owner and I determine is the biggest problem, that's always got to be part of the execution of our work, is considering the employees and how they fit in.
Because if they're not bought in, you're almost doomed to fail, because they're
Right.
the front lines. They're the
Right.
ones selling to your customers.
Yeah,
Right.
Right. So you decided to do a workshop.
Yeah, I did
with-
a workshop with the business owner and the team. We talked through all the products, and we talked through the kind of thought process of the sales associates when selling the products. What we discovered was just that what I already mentioned is just that big product, the one that was initially built for a small business, and then added bells and whistles to try to make it more attractive to a bigger business. It really wasn't working. I mean, it wasn't really attractive to that big business the way that they thought it would be. And we looked at their pipeline, we looked at the leads that they had acquired. They purchased some leads to try to call out on that. Those leads had not converted, none of them. Kind of looked at all of the data that they had available about their products and about their sales, and it just wasn't working.
Now, did they negatively affect their small business customers? Because sometimes I've seen businesses that'll do that when they're trying to go after the big guy. They forget what got them where they are,
Yeah.
and kind of alienate the original client.
Yeah, I think that is also true. Yeah. They weren't getting big clients, but they weren't getting small clients
Anymore either, yeah, because they changed everything.
This kind of stalled their business. The change in focus kind of stalled the business overall, which is really too bad. We kind of took a step back and regrouped, and I had to ask the question, why did you change your focus? And we had to, the business owner and I had to have a heart-to-heart about that, about why. And then think about how that small business product, if we brought it back to basics, maybe focus the leads instead of this company, this brand new segment of customer, this brand new persona, which is a larger business. Instead, if we narrowed it down and said, okay, this is the persona of your existing client, and what is it that they want based on the data, like what has been successful with them in the past, and what if instead of trying to get these leads that they had purchased, one strategy, one tactic that we came up with was, let's go and get some leads based on the persona of the clients that have already worked, because there are plenty of them.
Sure.
Plenty of that type of lead. Because we narrowed it down so much more. I don't know if you've ever talked about like buying leads, acquiring leads here on this program.
We haven't really, no. I will kind of give my opinion on it.
Yeah.
It's not always the best way.
So, and I would tend to agree with you, especially if you're casting a really wide net.
Yeah.
But there are definitely services out there that will help if you give them all the details. They're more expensive, of course. Each lead is more expensive, but if you really filter, narrow down, and get really granular, you can get some really good quality leads back. And there are some services that will do that, get to that level.
I think it's like maybe less of like the actual well, the quality of the lead is important, but I think more importantly is like the marketing and the sales strategy you're putting behind the lead. Because if your plan is to just call them every single day, it's not a very good plan.
Agreed.
And that's what a lot of companies do.
Absolutely.
Sort of the stalker method, isn't it?
Yeah, like
Yeah, it hasn't worked so far.
ex-girlfriend.
Not good.
But I would say the strategy of really trying to understand the persona of the right customer.
Oh yeah, we talked about that a little bit on our last podcast, because any type of marketing, you need to know your personas, and a lot of businesses don't do that.
Right.
They don't even know who their target client is. And
Right. Absolutely. Oh yeah,
And
I
this
can tell
is-
you all kinds of stories about that.
Well, I was going to say, this is exactly
Podcast part
what
2.
you were doing with this particular client, was helping them realize that, no, your client is really these smaller businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, as attractive as the larger ones looked, fewer clients, bigger profit margins, you're built to service these smaller businesses, and sort of readjusting their sites and probably having to, substantiate a lot of what you were saying with some facts and figures. Now, so how do you go about convincing them that, no, you really, this is your audience, not this over here, but this? Because I imagine a lot of business owners, they want to talk about hard numbers. They want to
And
say,
they already invested in
well,
what they did.
you prove to me that what you're saying is true. I mean, how do you bear that out?
Yeah, so it's really about taking whatever existing data that they have and determining what has been successful so far. And sometimes it's not always the right approach to move forward. Just because it's been successful in the past doesn't mean it's going to be successful in the future.
Right.
Sure. No, that absolutely makes sense. You can't always count on the past as an indicator.
Right.
I mean, it's a good thing to look at, but
So is this something that happens a lot, where the business thinks that this is their target market, and you have to come in and kind of redirect them, and do you get pushback on that?
Absolutely. I can tell you another story.
You're like,
about
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, business owners just don't take your advice and just be, yeah.
we love stories.
No, so I worked with a company that, and this is really funny. The guy that I was talking to, the business owner, he said he swore that every single one of his clients was, between 35 and 60, and they were female. Like up and down, swore up and down that was the case. And I said, well, how do you know? Just tell me how you know. I don't know.
I just know.
Based on
I just know.
based on the calls that we get, and
Okay.
he's kind of rattling off like some off the top of his head kind of data, anecdotal. That's what the word I was.
Yeah.
Anecdotal kind of data. I said, okay, well, how about let's go back and let's take a look at your numbers. And so we just looked at his web traffic. Like that's all we had to do. And sure enough, it was
way
40-year-old men.
Wow. A little
little
different, yeah.
But to be completely opposite was very eye-opening,
And how did he take to that once you showed him the data?
Oh, he was thrilled to know.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
And I mean, the data doesn't lie, right? I mean, and there's a lot of data out there. I worked with you can get actually a lot of data from your credit card company.
Wow.
About the demographics of your customers.
Interesting. I did not know
Actually,
that.
I remember a restaurant client, I guess the credit card company had done some kind of like points program with him or something, but he was privy to information, and he thought that his customer base was like 15 miles. He's like, no, my top spenders are within like 5 miles of my location. And that was an eye-opener for him.
Absolutely.
Because the data was there. But again, he had, consistently thought this one thing and had told himself that, and was spending marketing dollars on like TV ads that were broadcasting miles and miles away. And that's kind of wasted money.
That's it. Now I
Absolutely.
know Big Brother is watching.
Yeah.
Never mind.
No. There's really a lot of information when you think about end customer, and of course that applies. I mean, that applies when it's B2C business. You're the ones who buy your products and services. You can find a lot of information if they use credit cards. It's a fantastic way to find information about them, and it's very easy to do that. It's a little bit more difficult when you're a B2C business, I think, but you really have to dig into the company persona. And
Now, do you find often that most of your clients don't do that digging?
oh, yeah. No. It takes too much time.
Yeah, well, that's it. They got a lot to do. They're dealing
Yeah.
with a bunch of other things.
They probably have these preconceived notions, you know,
Right.
and especially if they've been in a business for a long time,
Yeah.
they probably have failed to evolve with like who their current customer is.
Well, it's either that, yeah, like you said, they may have had one specific type of customer at one time and just assumed that that was going to be the way it was all the way across the board. And then over time that evolves. Next thing you know it, like you said, you're at 40-year-old men instead
Right.
of...
Yeah.
Now, you had said when you were talking about this sort of original story of working with this client, and they thought their personas were larger companies, and they really were.
They were kind of targeting it for a specific reason.
Right.
It was easier.
And you said in the process you looked at their product line. Now I'm assuming that that's part of the process when you sit down with any client. In their case, they were aiming at the wrong audience. But have there been cases where you've had to tell your client, based on your personas, you're really selling the wrong product
Yeah.
or the wrong service?
Definitely. So, I mean, I don't want to tell another story about the bridal shop, but that was another thing that we kind of uncovered.
That's what. Bridal shops are
I'm
great.
trying to think of a different example.
Oh, okay. Tell us about the bridal shop,
Yeah,
though. So
we can use that.
what was it you had to get them to adjust in regards to their products?
I'm going to try to talk about it a little bit more generally because I don't want anybody to know exactly who this client
Sure.
is. I think. So, okay, and Justin, your question was, they're targeting the wrong client. Are there times that they have the wrong
Service or product?
product
Yeah.
or service?
And if you don't have an example,
and I-
that's okay. We can go on to another question.
Well, it sounds like that original, where you were talking about the big clients versus the small businesses, that's somewhat of what you were just asking the question on, was the fact that even in the case of going after that big client, kind of alienated the small client too, so they had to go back to what originally made them what they were, right?
Yeah, I would say that that's true. You know, it's really just about knowing what your customer actually wants. You know, if they're satisfied with what you are offering, or if it's time to think about a new product or service, how you, to your earlier point, you know, how you evolve. If you've been in business for a while, how you evolve your products and services to meet your customers' needs and demands of the current day. You know, that could involve, you know, offering more technology. You know,
Example that came up before: Blockbuster versus Netflix.
Absolutely.
Blockbuster did not
Blockbuster.
evolve, right? Exactly. And Netflix evolved. They
Yeah.
changed. They had a service and they changed it up based off of what their customers wanted. It was a big one with technology, though, because technology changed. And Justin was talking about Kodak earlier.
Kodak did the same thing. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they mistakenly thought they were in the film business,
Yeah.
and they
Film
didn't.
went out, yeah.
They didn't adapt, you know, to the digital age. And you know, I guess you could say, hey, 110-year run's not bad for a company,
No, true.
but they could have lasted well beyond what they did.
Because they had the first digital camera in their hand.
Yes, they did, and they sat on it. They literally sat on it because they were protecting their film sales. Because they didn't want
That's where they thought their business
Yeah.
was.
Well, the same.
That's
But
interesting.
the interesting thing is, to go on to that same topic, is there's a lot of companies that have made that mistake. Look at VHS versus Betamax. Remember the old Sony
Yeah.
Betamax?
Oh, what?
Sorry, we're showing our age over here, but
Google it.
When video cassette recorders first came out, prior to that, there was a better quality product.
Yeah, Sony had developed
Sony
the Betamax technology,
It's a smaller tape. It was a much higher quality tape,
but more expensive.
but more expensive and proprietary.
Okay.
Sony didn't want to give out the rights to make the machines that played these to anybody but themselves.
Okay.
So this other company came along. I don't remember what the other company that made the VHS tapes was,
Yeah.
but they made the machines so that any company could go out and make the machines, and they
Right.
just pay a licensing fee to
And it
do
was
that.
a lower quality format, but it was widely available and cheaper to produce. So VHS won, and that's why you've probably never heard of Betamax.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
case in
only
point,
around
yeah.
for what, a year, if that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very short war, and then VHS won.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same with MP3s, right? When MP3s were first developed, they took analog audio, which takes up an enormous amount of space, as a file.
Okay.
And they condensed it down so it could be a small file. So you could get a bunch of these MP3s on your MP3 player, right? But they had to sacrifice a little bit of quality. And audio files, people that are really into audio will tell you that MP3s are garbage. But you know what?
Still went out.
They were widely adopted, inexpensive to produce, and most people who just want to listen to music don't care that, the high end and the low end are missing. They just want to hear their music.
Yeah.
So MP3 beat out, analog, which is, if you buy an LP, that's analog.
Yeah.
So the overall point here is that, if you're not listening to what your customers want and you're assuming, that's a good way to go out of business, I guess.
Pretty much. Yep.
So Ashley, how do I find out what my customers want or my clients? Like, how do you get to the bottom of that? How do you, to bring it back to, the stories you're telling of helping these businesses, how do you figure that out and transition them?
So I'm reminded of a quote, and I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I feel like maybe I should get it exactly right.
Say it now, and then
Yeah,
if you want to post it after the podcast, when we do the podcast, we always share resources after. So if you find the exact person,
We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, good.
I'm the same way. I mess up quotes and cliches like it's my job.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not.
but it's the,
Kill one bird with two stones,
She's gonna kill me in a second. Kill one bird with 2 loaves of bread.
Well,
I don't know what that's all about.
it's your customers' minimum expectation of their interaction with you is based on their best experience anywhere else. So you're really competing. You're not just competing with others in your own industry. You're really competing with the best experience that the client has, your customer has had anywhere.
Wow.
So
That ups the game a little bit.
right,
Ups
right.
the bar.
But I mean, I think
Bars
about
up
how
here.
true that is, though. If you're, really any business, if they've had a great experience with technology, they assume that is what everyone should provide.
That's the standard.
That's their standard now in
gold
their
standard,
mind.
Wow, that's
the
like
ease
a
of-
mind-blowing concept.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The competitiveness of being a top-level business.
Yeah.
So you're not just up against actual data, you're up against expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's worse than the data sometimes.
Well, but I think you kind of have to think about what. I mean, I'm a student. I do all kinds of research. I mean, I love researching and listening to TED Talks and things like that about customer experience. And I've got a ton of resources from the Customer Experience Professionals Association. Lots of connections there. That. I think as a business owner, it's really important to stay current on what customers want, and you can focus on the things that are within your own industry to start with, I think, and what does a great experience look like in your industry by being a customer yourself, but your customer of your business is very rarely actually you. You very rarely actually fit the mold of your ideal customer.
That's a great point. A lot of business owners don't understand that. They make decisions based on their own likes, dislikes, feelings, intuitions, and it's rarely that's the case.
Exactly. Yeah, but understanding the emotional connection, given the quote earlier, that your customer has with experiences outside of the one they have with you. We all have that. We all have this emotional component that I think we end up having with businesses. It could be just ease of use. It could be the people that work at this business. Maybe you go to the same coffee shop every single day because you like the barista knows your name and knows what you drink.
That's a great part of it. When I think about customer experience, it's not necessarily always that end purchase point. It may be what leads up to that purchase.
Yeah,
if I go into a store, how well am I taken care of when I walk in there? Are they acknowledging that I'm there?
Right.
Do they want to know more about me? That's stuff that all comes in before that money's even plunked down.
So it's important to think about, I think, as a business owner, think about why like just using that example again of the coffee shop with the barista that knows the customer's
big
name.
part.
Why is that person good at their job? Like, why is it because of them as an individual? Is it because of a culture within the business? What's the reason? And I think you have to have observations when you're out and about and how things make you feel. And I think it helps you understand and empathize a little bit more with your own customer when you've got kind of that at the front of your mind.
Yeah, and going back to what you're talking about, the employee end of it. I worked for a company many, many years ago. It's got to be 20 some odd years ago now. That they were a big chain company, but their roots started out as a family style setup. So all of their employees were treated like family. Well, what was the end on that was their employees went out and busted their butts to make sure the sales were there, made sure, and that's that customer I think you were talking about a minute ago is your employee being a customer. When you treat your employees right, they're going to treat your customers even that much better.
Yeah, you're right on with that. And it's not about money with employees when it comes to employees. It's, I mentioned the client that I had earlier where we developed an employee engagement program. She had tried to give her employees more money, more flexibility, more vacation time, and they just weren't buying in. And what we discovered is just that the money stuff, while it's important to everybody, right? Everybody works for money. Like, that's what we do. That's why we have jobs.
Got to pay the bills.
But, right, we got to pay the bills. But they needed to feel connected to what the business was all about, and we just had to really start to develop a culture of customer experience. I think they already had the customer experience piece. They already had the right ideas. But it's more about what is it? What is the cultural aspect that needs to be there to make the employees feel like they're part of that? And it's not just a checklist. It's not just something that you can roll out to the employees and make them do it. It actually has to be generated by them. They have to be involved.
Yeah, because employees can tell when it's something fake, when it's something to just do.
And it makes their job easier because it stops feeling like work.
Absolutely.
It's not just going through the motions. It's actually making a difference because everyone wants to make a difference.
Absolutely.
They want to feel like their work matters over their lifetime, like they've done something significant. So it's really that's how we work that through.
Thank you for sharing those stories with us and helping us understand who the customer really is, because it's not always who we think it is, and there's a lot of different personas, if you will, in defining that customer. So really appreciate you sitting with us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Closing takeaways, or any of our listeners should kind of, grab onto? What are your takeaway points for knowing who your customer really is?
So I think, first of all, your customer is not just your end customer that buys your products and services. Your customer is going to be, obviously that's a traditional customer. It's also going to be your employees, like we talked about. It's also going to be your the other businesses that you do business with, so that you purchase from. So vendors, you want to make sure you maintain positive relationships, and we didn't even talk about that part, but
another podcast,
developing positive relationships with the vendors that you do business with, and then the other businesses potentially that need your services. So there are lots of ways to define what a customer is, and it's not, and definitely what we said earlier is it's not your customer very rarely looks like you. You have to make sure you keep that in mind, but you need to be a student of kind of the world of customer experience in general. I think that's a really important piece as a business owner, how you look at the world, and you kind of have to put that lens on of customer experience, and so that you understand that your customer's minimum expectation of you is based on their best experience anywhere.
That's the part of the day. This whole thing I'm going to take away. It's a good thing to think about. I never gave that a thought. So, having said all that, thank you again for coming. And if somebody wants to reach out to you and use your services, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
probably the best way would be email. Yeah, Ashley, ASHLEY, at ABLExConsultants.com. I also have a website, ABLExConsultants.com. And I'm happy to just have conversations with folks about what they think their issues might be, and we can try to get to the bottom of things. I am also interested in working with nonprofits, so that's another thing I'd like for folks to keep in mind.
Is there any particular nonprofit you would like to be able to connect with?
Yeah, dream nonprofit. Maybe somebody will hear it.
You want me to name one?
Yeah, why not?
No.
Come on.
Name one. Don't get me wrong, I want to be successful as a small business.
Sure.
That's definitely why I do this, but no, that's not why I do this. The reason why I really do this is because I feel like I have something that I can offer, and I'm not gonna charge a ton of money. Like I feel like this is a service, something that I can give back, and that's what makes me really passionate about the work that I do. And I'm blessed in that I have the ability to work with lots of businesses regardless of their means.
Nice.
And I want to get out there as much as I can and provide that service that I can. So I think I could help nonprofits. I didn't even mention this before, but I was the director of a nonprofit for several years that focused on historic preservation and promotion of a downtown. It was a Main Street program.
Nice.
It would be cool to work with a Main Street program. A nonprofit that's interested in historic preservation and promotion. Just because I have that experience already, I know that there are several of them in the state, so that would be really cool.
Nice.
All right. Well,
And you're going to come back and talk with us again soon?
Sure, I will.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We've been scared away. Good.
No, you didn't scare me away.
Good.
I feel like there's just so much to say. There really is a lot that I could say. So yeah, I appreciate you having me here, and I would love to talk to you again.
Awesome. So now it's our time for shameless plugs.
yeah.
MarketingEssentialsTeam.com is where you can get a wealth of information. You can sign up for our email list. You
Right.
can see the podcast.
Contact us directly.
Contact us directly. You can see the podcast directly on there also. Also, you can get the podcast through iTunes. Subscribe there, and you'll get a notification on your, like me, I'll get it on my phone telling me when the latest podcast is up. So,
Right. Well, you're usually the first person to know it because you edit the podcast.
well, I am, but I'm just trying to explain that that's how it works, smart aleck.
Do you have to act surprised when you get that email? Like,
Oh my gosh, another one broke. No. Wow. All kidding aside, it is a great way to keep track of what we're doing.
Right.
We're breaking podcasts every Wednesday now, so we're doing once a week, which is great.
Yep. And if you're a small business and you have an interest in marketing, especially marketing your own business or just marketing in general, you definitely want to become part of the Little Rhody Marketing Support Group, which is a private Facebook group. You can find us on Facebook. Just put Little Rhody Marketing Support Group in the search, and we'll come right up.
You're going to
And
get past Alicia, our gatekeeper, though.
right, you have to get past Alicia. Strict vetting process to get into the group.
2 questions.
Are you breathing? Yes, you're
Yeah, but on a similar note, as to Ashley was saying, our goal is to help local businesses, and we are lucky that we have a whole group of people in this Facebook marketing group that are willing to share information, whether it be other local business owners and other local professionals and marketers who want to share advice and tips with you. So please join the group if you get a chance, and find us online. And that'll be it for today, right?
Yeah, until next time.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Ashley, for joining us, and have a great day, everybody.